On today's video, we're going to have a different format as we roll out our latest series, the Executive Search Sit Down. And for this series, we invite fellow peers who are navigating the recruiting and executive search landscape. We get to find out about their backgrounds and we unpack their tools and strategies for recruiting and retaining top talent in their specific industries and how they deliver value to their customers. We also discuss trends and provide advice that they'd like to pass along to other fellow recruiters who are in the industry. However, today's episode is going to be a little bit different because we don't have another recruiter coming on, but this guest was too good of a guest to pass up on. Today's guest is Quinn, who is the Director of Mental Conditioning and Operations for the Moawad Consulting Group. We cover the concept of neutral thinking and how this can apply to you as a hiring manager or as a candidate on the job market. So let's get into today's episode. All right, welcome everyone to the Executive Search Sit Down. Today we are sitting down with Quinn, who is the Director of Mental Conditioning for the Moawad Consulting Group. Sean, welcome to the show.
Hey Jim, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And just to kind of give everyone a background on why we're bringing Sean on, a few months ago, I did a book review of Trevor Moawad's book, It Takes What It Takes. And we received a lot of positive feedback on this message of neutral thinking. So we're definitely going to get into the book. But before we do that, Sean, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I have a master's degree in sport psychology. I'm a certified consultant with the Association for Applied Sports Psychology. I work with a lot of elite athletes, so athletes in professional Major League Baseball, the NFL, NBA, and then also a lot of collegiate athletes and kind of your elite high school kids. And then I have a lot of golfers I work with, and that's just the sports sector. But I also work in the business field, so I have a lot of clients that are, in corporate America, whether it may be commercial real estate, mortgages. I work with some tech companies, but help them kind of perform to be better. So I've been doing this about 9 years. I've been affiliated with Trevor for the last 6 years, and we're based out of Scottsdale, Arizona, but our clients are kind of remote throughout the country. So a lot of times we'll jump on the phone and try and talk with them a couple times a month. And with that being said, trying to help them kind of, I guess not level off and feel like they're at a plateau, but how do we keep climbing a mountain? And so, how do we keep striving for success and trying to figure out, each thing that we happens in our day-to-day life, how we can essentially navigate through the seas and be able to come better, no matter if it's good or bad, whatever the situation is kind of throwing at us.
Yeah, and you mentioned working with some golfing clients. You mentioned the company being based in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we were talking before off camera, before we hit record, that you're in Northern California. So terrible places for golfing clients, right?
Yeah, no, terrible. No, it's great. This time of year, it's pretty hot in Scottsdale. Yeah. It's about 112 right now, I believe. So I'm up in Northern California as well. But during the pandemic, haven't been out in Scottsdale as much, but definitely try and go out there and see some of my clients in the off season, but also in season too. And so it's a good little retreat and good place to go to, and it's a heck of a place to go and try and go get 18 in when you can.
Yeah, no doubt. So how did you get connected with Trevor? How did you guys sync up?
Yeah, so I went out to I got a position at IMG Academy back in 2012, and Trevor was kind of in his twilight of working out there. Trevor was the director of performance, and so he ran the mental conditioning department, nutrition, strength conditioning, and then they had a leadership academy as well that Trevor kind of oversaw. And so was out there, met Trevor, and just kind of really just, became fascinated by what he does and how he does it. At the time, Trevor was working with Florida State football and Alabama football. He had just started working with Russell, and, Russell hadn't been a name yet, but, he's up and coming. And, Trevor done a lot of work in the tennis field as well. And just, Trevor, just his overall attitude, just how he goes about and does things, we just kind of clicked. And so, Trevor took a position out in Scottsdale at Athletes Performance, which is now rebranded as Exos. And Trevor asked me, knowing that I'm from the West Coast, hey, did I want to come out to Exos and work with him? And so that's a big training facility out there. So I don't know if you're familiar, but basically it's throughout the year, I think this last year they trained 98 draft eligible prospects for the NFL, and I want to say they got 17 first rounders. So,
Wow.
a lot of elite people come through those doors, whether it's football, whether it's baseball in the off season, golf, basketball, but they go out there and train. And then, we did some stuff on the mental aspect of that. So, was out there with Trev in 2014, and then Trev, said, "Hey, let's start our own company and let's do this." And so, myself and another who does a lot of video for us, his name is John, took the leap, and Trevor formed Moawad Consulting Group, and we went with him, and here we are. And so basically in Scottsdale is our headquarters, but a lot of times our clients are spread throughout the country in the middle of the season, so it's kind of remote, but we try and get with them as much as we can, because we want to make sure that we're on top of what's going on with them. But even on top of that, in the off season, we build a lot of plans, and so that's when we kind of meet face to face and kind of talk to them in person to develop their plans and their goals for what they want to accomplish the next season, so that they're adhering to their plans and their discipline as well.
Yeah, and I want to go back. You just kind of glossed over IMG Academy.
Yep.
For people that aren't familiar, now for people that know the name, right, this is kind of the gold standard in academics of athletic performance here in Florida. But for people that don't know IMG, can you just give a brief overview, just so people understand that the level of the athletes that you guys are working with?
Yeah, so I mean, it's the facility is insane. It's a sport mecca for sure. It is massive. I know when I was there, I think I want to say there were 75 tennis courts, and there was 16 soccer fields, 9 baseball diamonds, a 10,000 seat high school football stadium. They had I want to say 8 indoor basketball courts. Gatorade Sports Science. You see a lot of commercials where the guys have stuff hooked up and they're training. That's based out of there. This place is just a compound, and it's massive, and it's a way for athletes that to go out there and go train, and be able to be about their business. And so when I was there, it was quite interesting to see who would come in, who would come out, and just kind of the level of just privacy and the way that they can go about their business, but also seeing the discipline of the athletes, not just in season, but in the off season, and how they come and train and really want to push themselves to get better. And so kind of seeing that was kind of my first, kind of taste of seeing this, this basically Disneyland for athletes. And then, moving over to Exos, Athletes Performance at the time, seeing that it was a smaller phase, but it was they did a tremendous job of getting athletes in there and really training them and doing a first-class job of what they do. It wasn't quite the size of an IMG, but the clientele base, was right up there. And I'd say maybe, even surpass it. But really kind of elite people do elite things. And what we've seen in the off season is that, there's no time to sleep for these guys. They're training 24/7. A lot of your top professionals, kind of have a chip on their shoulder saying that, yeah, I had a good season last year, but someone's chasing me. And so, how am I going to still perform at a high level this next season and not be complacent? And so, that's kind of I guess we like to say success leaves clues. And so it's a way that we see things that, little blueprints of success that, I think translates into our everyday lives, that we can kind of adapt and kind of adhere to. Is that how are we trying to strive to get better ourselves too? Because that's what kind of elite people do, elite performers do.
Yeah, without a doubt. Thanks for sharing that. So let's get into the book a little bit. This concept of neutral thinking. Now, a lot of people have heard of negative thinking, they've heard of positive thinking, but most people probably haven't heard of neutral thinking. So can you just give us a brief overview of what that is, what that means?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's so many ways to talk about it, but looking at it, I think even growing up as a kid, everyone, you always hear be positive. And right. I think a lot of times it can be tough to be positive in tough times when adversity strikes. We can look back to March of this year, 2020, and see that, there's a lot of adversity that started to begin with this pandemic. And looking at that, it's really tough to say, hey, let's be positive and put a smile on our face. Right. The same way that, we tell our athletes, when they're training and it's August and it's 95 with a 92% heat index to go out there and enjoy it. You don't. But the thing is that we try and say don't be negative, and what we mean by that is let's not go to this negative rut. And what happens is if we go to a negative rut and kind of a negative, we can kind of cycle out and we can stop ourselves and limit ourselves from getting to where we want to be. One of the things that we talk about is kind of this concept of win. So what's important now? So when we see adversity and when it strikes, what's our game plan? What can we do? How can we adapt? So in March, when we see kind of, the world falling on itself and everything kind of happening, what can we do to make a change? What's important now is, okay, yes, I'm healthy at the moment. Yes, there's adversity coming on, but what can I do to adapt to this situation as opposed to let the situation shape me? Which in sport, a lot of times that can happen where, we throw a bad pass, we make an error, we strike out, we miss a shot, and we get consumed by that miss or that strikeout or that interception, and that consumes us. And so our mind doesn't process the word don't, can't, and won't. And so if I say don't throw an interception, what happens is that I create an image in my mind of throwing an interception, right? And so what that can do is the next time I'm out there, it can lead to having tension in my arm, tension in my body, and creating another mistake. Instead of saying that, what do we want to do? Well, let's throw a good pass. Let's hit the guy in stride. Now that's creating an image in my mind of doing what I want to do, and it's kind of freeing us up a little bit. But on top of that, it's what we want to accomplish. And so what we're thinking about is the task at hand as opposed to what we don't want to do. And so a lot of times with this, kind of neutral thinking, we want to think about the present moment. It keeps us grounded, but what is our game plan to go out there? I know in the book, there's a few examples, and Trev gives one about Russell Wilson, for instance, being down 16-0 in the NFC Championship game. And for Russell, it was the worst game he's ever played in his whole life, dating back through high school, college, wherever. Just never had a game like that. But his mindset with 4 minutes to go was, not like, hey, we're going to be okay, but I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to go out there. Let's make a play. Let's get a first down. Let's go. The score's only 16-0. We're not out of this yet, right? I think you can look back at the Super Bowl with the Falcons and the Patriots, for instance, and 18 minutes to go, and we're looking at a situation where the Patriots down 20-3. We were able to see it kind of mic'd up and see Tom Brady mic'd up, and some of the stuff, the narrative that he was saying was, hey, guys, let's get a stop on offense. Let's get a first down. Let's complete a pass. Let's go out there and just execute, right? And so we're thinking about the present moment as opposed to we're down 20-3 getting our ass kicked, right? Which is the reality that can happen to a lot of us. And so instead of thinking about the negative and being like, what got us here, let's think about the present and what we need to do to get out of this hole. So when a pandemic hits or something like that, which is tragic in itself to a lot of different things, people are losing lives, people losing jobs, people's environment and homeostasis is changing. We've got to think about how do we adapt, how do we create some sort of change so we can change for the good rather than change for the bad, and stay in this rut and stay in this hole and say, why me, as opposed to how do I get out of this? And I think you see a lot of successful people are able to thrive under pressure because they have that mentality and that mindset of the what's important now, as opposed to dwelling on the negative or, focusing on a positive without a plan.
Oh man, that's so powerful. That's so powerful. So let's make this as tangible as possible for our audience. So a lot of our audience here on this Executive Search Sit Down channel are going to be hiring managers trying to attract top talent, or candidates looking for their next career opportunity, especially candidates that may have been displaced because of this whole pandemic. I think as much as we'd like to compare ourselves to Russell Wilson and Tom Brady or some elite athlete, right? None of us are there, right? Most people aren't going to be there. So what advice, Sean, would you have for a hiring manager when it comes to this idea of neutral thinking, as far as like attracting top talent or maybe an interview process? Like, how can we put that through that type of lens?
Yeah, I think it's thinking about what you're looking for in a candidate, right? So what kind of candidate am I looking for? And a lot of times they may not be perfect when they interview with you, but can I mold them? Can I mold them into the candidate that I want? And so if you're looking at athletes, you're looking at a Tom Brady. I mean, Tom Brady's a 6th round pick, right? Said he was going to be a camp quarterback. Well, we drafted him because we saw maybe there's some potential in him, right? Mm-hmm. Brady gets to camp, all of a sudden he says impressing, making some plays, making some some passes and picking up the playbook and go, hey, this guy might be a backup. Okay, well, let's get him some more reps. And then ultimately, Drew Bledsoe got hurt and we throw him in the main stage in the spotlight, and then he hasn't lost a job since, and did a pretty good job. But that's someone that, if you're looking from a kind of outside looking in, he wasn't a first rounder, he wasn't the number one overall pick. He was a guy that checked some boxes and said, hey, we can maybe mold this guy and he can fit in our system and see how that works. A guy like Russell, for instance, third round pick. As far as size, a lot of people, draft analysts have said he's too short, wouldn't make it in the NFL. And that just wasn't your NFL type quarterback. But he used that as motivation. And so I think a lot of times it's looking at what drives a person, but also, what do they think of themselves? Do they think of themselves as that 6th round pick, or do they think that, hey, I've got a chip on my shoulder, and that what I see myself as reality is that I can continue to get better. I want to continue to grow. And so I want to learn as much from you as you can teach me as well. So I want to absorb that like a sponge. And I think that's kind of the sport metaphor of it, is looking at it that, you never know when you're going to find a diamond in the rough, but we've got to have some kind of criteria that we can check the boxes to make sure that, they fit our playbook. And then once they are in our playbook, they're able to adapt, learn, and then also kind of, I think there's a little bit of education there too, where how are we testing them and how are we kind of giving them the, I guess, the pat on the back, or, hey, the guidance that they need to kind of improve as well. Because I think that with a prospect, we need to guide them. We need to help them the best we can too, so that they understand that they're doing the right things or maybe the wrong things. And so we're molding them in the correct way.
Yeah, and on the candidate side, somebody that might be on a job market right now, as I mentioned before, they may have been displaced because of this whole global pandemic, and maybe they're starting to get a little bit devastated. They're starting to feel like, hey, am I ever going to find another job, or are we ever going to recover from this? And they're trying to figure out, hey, how am I going to support my family, and how am I going to get back into the job market? What advice would you have for someone like that through the lens of neutral thinking?
Yeah, and those are real questions, right? And those are real concerns, and we can get really negative if we dwell on that. Because it's real, right? I mean, it's there. We look at our checkbook. We look at what's going on. We look at the things around us. We can look at the news. We can look at a lot of things and say, man, this is tough. But the reality is that we also got to look at it and see what strengths we bring to the table. So just because we may be displaced right now and don't have an opportunity or don't have a job, doesn't mean that we can't make the most of it. So what strengths do we bring to the table? What are some jobs that we feel as if we can learn? And on top of that is what are some things that we want to do? I think it's not just going out there and endlessly searching for a job that's the perfect fit, but it's what am I passionate about? What am I qualified to do? What am I good at? And kind of looking at outside of that and saying, okay, here's some opportunities in these different fields that maybe I could potentially work for, and taking a chance. And so, is it something where you have a family and you're kind of rooted where you are? Okay, well, I'm not willing to get up and move, so maybe an opportunity across the country isn't the best for me. But somewhere local, something along the lines of right here, right now, I can do that. So really thinking about that, what's important right now, and developing a game plan around that, and thinking about, what are the values, what are the qualities you bring to the table and that you want in a job that you are looking for, so that it's a match for not just yourself, but for the company to hire you.
Oh, that's great advice. And I think that's something that everyone needs to hear right now. So Sean, thank you so much for taking the time, man. I really do appreciate it. Is there anything that you want to say before we let you get out of here and close things out?
No, I mean, I think, I really appreciate the time, Jim. And I think with everything going on, obviously, I think we're all dealing with a lot of things, and it can be tough at times. So it can be easier said than done to say, hey, don't be negative. But I really do think that if we can kind of adapt to the philosophy of just kind of trying to think as neutral as possible each day, trying to pick some things that might be good throughout. I do something with a lot of my clients called well, better, learned. And so each week, have them kind of reflect back and look at something that, 2 things that went well, 2 things that could have been better, and 2 things that they learned. This way that it's really kind of keeping them away from focusing on outcomes, and really focusing on the present. What do I take away from each week? And so this is from a sporting aspect. It's also from a business aspect. But I think when we're trying to look at, the overall whole and how we're trying to improve, how we're trying to get better, how do we self-evaluate ourselves? And during a time that's tough, are we always kind of digging the negative, saying that, this sucks, this is terrible, I can't believe this is happening, it's getting worse or it's getting better, I don't know, and all this influx and anxiety that can create. But how are we staying in the present and evaluating what's happening, and how are we trying to improve no matter the adversity that we're faced. And so I think that, for all of us, we can kind of, reflect back a little bit. We have a little bit more time on our hands, but reflect back in a way that we can kind of gain from the situation, as opposed to let the situation kind of, kind of defeat us in a way.
Yeah, sure. No, that's perfect. And I think that's a great way to wrap up the show. So Sean, thanks again for the time, man.
Jim, really appreciate it, man. You have a great rest of your afternoon and evening.
All right. So that's it for today's episode. We hope you're getting value out of this content. And if you are, be sure to subscribe to our channel and share with a friend or a colleague. And also, if you have ideas for future video topics, please drop those in the comments below. I really would love to hear from you. So until next time, I'm Jim Schaefer, and we'll catch you on the next video.